Hi boys and girls. Feels like a very long time since we've seen each other. Well, it's my turn to read the next chapter of Kensuke's Kingdom this time. And I couldn't be more excited because if you remember, the last part of the story was where Michael had just spotted a figure. He thought perhaps it was an orangutan maybe, over by his fire. But when he got a little bit closer, he saw that it wasn't an orangutan. It was a man. So chapter 5 is called I, Kensuke. Here we go. He was diminutive, no taller than me, and as old a man as I had ever seen. He wore nothing but a pair of tattered breeches bunched at the waist, and there was a large knife in his belt. He was thin too in places, under his arms, round his neck, and his midriff, his copper-brown skin, lay in folds about him, almost as if he'd shrunk inside. What little hair he had on his head and his chin was long and wispy and white. I could see at once that he was very agitated, his chin trembling, his heavily hooded eyes accusing and angry. "Damn it, he screeched at me. His whole body was shaking with fury. I backed away as he scuttled up the beach towards me, gesticulating wildly with his stick and haranguing me as he came. Ancient and skeletal he may have been, but he was moving fast, running almost. "Damn it! I had no idea what he was saying. It sounded Chinese or Japanese maybe. I was about to turn and run when Stella, who strangely had not barked at him at all, suddenly left my side and went bounding off towards him. Her hackles were not up. She was not growling. To my astonishment, she greeted him like a long-lost friend. He was no more than a few feet away from me when he stopped. We stood looking at each other in silence for a few moments. He was leaning on his stick, trying to catch his breath. "America-jin? America-jin? American? Ikokujin? British?" "Yes," I said, relieved to have understood something at last. "English. I'm English." It seemed a struggle for him to get the words out. "No good. Fire. No good. You understand? No fire." But he seemed a little less angry now. "But my mother, my father, they might see it. They might see the smoke." It was plain he didn't understand me, so I pointed out to sea, by way of explanation. "Out there. They're out there. They'll see the fire. They'll come. They'll fetch me." Instantly he became aggressive again. "Damn it!" he shrieked, waving his stick at me. "No fire!" I thought for a moment he was going to attack me, but he did not. Instead, he began to rake through the sand at my feet with his stick. He was drawing the outline of something, jabbering incomprehensibly at first. It looked like some kind of fruit at first, a nut, perhaps a peanut. Now I understood. It was a map of the island. When it was done, he fell on his knees beside it and piled up mounds of sand, one at each end. The two hills. Then, very deliberately, he etched out a straight line, top to bottom, cutting the smaller end of the island off from the larger one. "You boy, you here," he said, pointing back towards my cave at the end of the beach. "You!" And he stabbed his finger in the mound of sand that was my hill. Then, across the whole of the sand map, he began to write something. The lettering was not letters at all, but symbols. All kinds of ticks and pyramids and crosses and horizontal lines and slashes and squiggles. And he wrote it all backwards in columns from left to right. He sat on his haunches and tapped his chest. "Kensuke, I, Kensuke, my island." And he brought his hand down sharply like a chopper separating the island in two. "I, Kensuke, here. You, boy, here." I was already in no doubt as to what he meant. Suddenly he was on his feet again, waving me away with his stick. "Go, boy, no fire. Damida, no fire. You understand?" I didn't argue, but walked away at once. When, after a while, I dared to look back, he was kneeling down beside what was left of my fire and scooping still more sand onto it. Stella had stayed with him. I whistled for her. She came, but not at once. I could see she was reluctant to leave him. She was behaving very oddly. Stella Artois had never taken kindly to strangers. Never. I felt disappointed in her, a bit betrayed even. When I next looked back, the fire was not smoking at all. It had been completely smothered, and the old man was nowhere to be seen. For the rest of that day, I stayed in my cave. For some reason, I felt safe there. I suppose I'd already begun to think of it as home. I had no other. I felt as an orphan must feel, abandoned and alone in the world. I was frightened. I was angry. I was completely bewildered. I sat there trying to gather my thoughts. So far as I could tell, though I couldn't be sure of it, there were only the two of us on this island, the old man and me. In which case, it stood to reason that only he could have left me the fish and the bananas and the water. Surely that had been an act of kindness, a sign of friendship, of welcome, and yet now this same man had banished me to one end of the island as if I was a leper, and had made it quite clear that he never wanted us to meet ever again, and all because I had lit a fire. None of it made any sense at all, unless he was out of his head and completely mad. Right, stop there for today. Wonder what's going to happen next. Do you think Michael will be able to stay to his side of the island? Or do you think he's going to be curious and want to find out more about the mysterious man, Kensuke? I know I want to know more. We'll have to wait until next time. See you next time for more story. Bye, boys and girls.